Let's begin. Marcus Rubio sat in the corner booth of the diner, watching steam rise from his coffee cup as winter rain hammered the windows. December 23rd, and the weather matched his mood: cold, gray, relentless. His phone buzzed with another message from Sandra, his wife of 9 years. He didn't need to read it to know the content. Her mother Carol was arriving tomorrow for Christmas, and Sandra's messages had become increasingly demanding over the past week. He thought about his son, 7-year-old Benjamin, waiting at home. The boy who used to run to him when he walked through the door now hesitated, watching his mother's face first to gauge whether showing affection to his father was permitted that day. Marcus had noticed the change 6 months ago, right around the time Sandra started spending more time at her mother's house in Connecticut. His work phone rang. Theodore Ayers, his college roommate and now one of the most respected family law attorneys in New York, calling outside business hours was never a good sign. "Marcus, I've reviewed everything you sent me," Theodore said without preamble. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus glanced at the manila folder on the seat beside him. 6 months of documentation. Timestamps, recordings, photographs, bank statements. "I'm sure. I just need to know it's airtight." "It's more than airtight. It's—" Theodore paused. "I've been practicing for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone prepare like this. But Marcus, once we pull this trigger, there's no going back." "Good." Marcus ended the call and picked up the folder. Inside was the evidence of what his marriage had become, what his wife and her family had turned into. Or perhaps, what they'd always been, and he'd been too blind to see. Marcus had met Sandra Price 9 years ago at a gallery opening in Manhattan. He'd been a junior architect at Chen and Morrison. She'd been an art consultant working for her family's investment firm. She was beautiful, charming, and came from old Connecticut money. Her family owned Price Investments, a firm her grandfather had founded in the 1950s. Marcus, the son of a Puerto Rican immigrant father and an Irish-American mother who'd worked 2 jobs to put him through college, had been flattered by her attention. The courtship had been whirlwind. Sandra's mother Carol had been cordial at first, though Marcus noticed the way her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at him. Her father had died 2 years before Marcus met Sandra, leaving Carol as the matriarch of the Price family. Sandra's younger cousin Morgan, Carol's nephew's daughter, lived with Carol after her own parents' messy divorce and treated the Price mansion like her personal kingdom. They'd married after 8 months. Benjamin was born a year later, and for a while, Marcus thought he'd built the life he dreamed of. He made partner at his firm by 32, designed award-winning buildings, provided well for his family. But Sandra changed after Benjamin's birth. Or rather, the mask slipped. It started with small comments. "My mother says you're working too much. The Prices don't live in neighborhoods like this. Benjamin needs to understand his heritage, the Price heritage." Sandra began insisting. Benjamin spent weekends at Carol's mansion, often without Marcus. When he protested, Sandra would turn cold, sometimes for days. The real shift came last summer. Marcus arrived home early from a site visit to find Sandra on the phone with her mother, laughing. "He actually thinks he's Benjamin's equal parent," she'd said. "Mother, please. He's useful for appearances. But Benjamin is a Price. He'll understand that when he's older." Marcus had stood in the hallway, frozen. That night, he'd started documenting everything. Now, as he drove home through the rain, Marcus thought about the pattern he'd uncovered. Sandra's bank accounts, separate from their joint finances, showed monthly transfers from Carol amounts that exceeded their household expenses. Her phone records showed daily calls to her mother, sometimes lasting hours. And the private investigator Marcus had hired had uncovered something else. Sandra and Carol had consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys over the past 4 months. They were planning something, and whatever it was, it involved separating Marcus from Benjamin. He pulled into their brownstones parking space and sat in the darkness. Through the window, he could see Sandra pacing, phone pressed to her ear, always talking to her mother, always scheming. Marcus walked inside to find Benjamin at the kitchen table, struggling with a math worksheet. The boy looked up, and Marcus saw the uncertainty in his eyes, that terrible pause before deciding it was safe to smile. "Dad." Benjamin's face brightened, but he glanced toward the living room where Sandra's voice carried. "Hey, buddy." Marcus knelt beside his son's chair. "How's the homework?" "It's hard," Benjamin whispered. Mom said I should figure it out myself. She said asking for help is for weak people. Marcus felt something harden in his chest. That's not true, Ben. Smart people know when to ask for help. Let's take a look. They worked through the problems together, and for 20 minutes, the world was just a father and son doing math. Then Sandra appeared in the doorway. Marcus, my mother's arriving at noon tomorrow. She expects the house to be spotless. Her tone was clipped, imperious. This was the real Sandra, the one she no longer bothered to hide. And we're hosting Christmas dinner here this year. 20 people. 20? Marcus kept his voice neutral. You didn't mention that. I'm mentioning it now. Mother's bringing Morgan and some business associates. Important people. She emphasized the last two words, the implication clear, unlike you. Fine. Marcus stood. I have a site meeting in the morning. I'll be back by 2. Sandra's eyes narrowed. You're not seriously working on Christmas Eve? Emergency consultation. The Riverside Project. Can't be helped. This was true, though Marcus had volunteered for the meeting when it came up. He needed the cover. Typical, Sandra muttered, turning away. Benjamin, go to your room. You need to practice your table manners for tomorrow. Grandmother expects perfection. After Benjamin left, Marcus stood in the kitchen, listening to Sandra's footsteps overhead. He pulled out his phone and sent Theodore a text. Proceed with Phase 1. The response came immediately. Confirmed. Documents filed. Custody petition submitted. Restraining order ready if needed. Marcus had built his career on understanding structures, finding the load-bearing points, knowing exactly where to apply pressure to bring down a building safely. His marriage was no different. He'd found every weakness, documented every crack, and tomorrow the demolition would begin. But first, he needed to get through Christmas Eve. The emergency consultation lasted 3 hours. Marcus stood in the half-finished lobby of the Riverside complex, reviewing structural plans with the chief engineer, but his mind was elsewhere. His phone buzzed constantly messages from Sandra, each more demanding than the last. Where are you? Mother is asking for you. This is embarrassing. Benjamin is asking questions. I told him his father doesn't prioritize family. Marcus pocketed his phone. Let her wonder. Let Carol wonder. They'd know soon enough. By the time he finished, it was nearly 1 o'clock. He told Sandra he'd be back by 2, which meant he'd arrive around 2:30. He'd learned that being slightly late, slightly unreliable in their eyes, made them bolder, made them reveal themselves. He drove home slowly, running through Theodore's plan one more time. The legal framework was elegant. Marcus had documented evidence of parental alienation, emotional abuse of a minor, and financial misconduct within the marriage. But the real leverage was something else entirely, something Marcus had discovered through weeks of careful investigation. The Price family fortune, it turned out, wasn't as solid as they pretended. Carol had been making risky investments, using Sandra's name on the documents. If those deals went south, and Marcus's contacts in finance suggested they would, soon Sandra would be legally liable for millions in losses. Unless, of course, she could claim she hadn't known what she was signing. Which meant she'd need to prove she wasn't competent to manage her own affairs. Which meant she'd undermine her own custody claims. Carol and Sandra had built a trap for themselves, and they didn't even know it yet. Marcus pulled up to the brownstone at 2:30. Through the window, he could see the house was full of people. Carol's silver Mercedes was parked out front, along with 2 other expensive cars he didn't recognize. He grabbed his coat and headed inside, where the sound of laughter echoed through the hallway. The living room was transformed 20 people in cocktail attire, catering staff moving between them with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. This wasn't a family Christmas. This was a Price family exhibition, and Marcus was the outsider being put on display. Carol Price stood at the center of the room, holding court. At 63, she was perfectly preserved, her silver hair styled immaculately, her black dress probably costing more than most people's monthly rent. She saw Marcus enter, and her expression shifted, a flash of disdain quickly masked by cool politeness. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "How kind of you to join us." Every head turned. Marcus recognized some of them business associates of the Price family, old Connecticut money, the kind of people who measured worth in bloodlines and bank accounts. Sandra appeared at her mother's side, wearing a red dress Marcus had never seen. "We were beginning to think you'd forgotten about us," she said, her smile sharp. "Work emergency. Marcus replied. Where's Benjamin? In his room, Carol interjected. This is an adult gathering. We thought it best he stay upstairs until dinner. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he nodded. I'll check on him. Actually, Sandra stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm with theatrical affection for their audience. Mother wanted to introduce you to everyone first. Come, darling. The next hour was torture. Carol paraded Marcus around like a curiosity, making subtle jabs disguised as compliments. Marcus is an architect, she'd say, the word dripping with condescension. Very hands-on work. Not like the price tradition of finance, but we're modern enough to accept all sorts. Morgan Price, Sandra's 19-year-old cousin, watched from the corner with undisguised contempt. She'd grown up in the mansion after her parents' divorce, raised by Carol to believe she was Price royalty. Marcus had noticed how she treated service workers, how she spoke about anyone she considered beneath her. She was Carol's protégé, and she wore her cruelty like a badge of honor. At 4 o'clock, Carol announced dinner would be served. The dining room table had been extended to accommodate everyone, place cards marking each seat. Marcus found his name at the far end, separated from Sandra by a dozen guests. Benjamin's card wasn't on the table at all. Where's Ben eating? Marcus asked. Carol smiled. The children's table, of course. In the kitchen. He's the only child here. Nevertheless, Carol's tone left no room for argument. Marcus climbed the stairs to Benjamin's room. His son sat on the bed, still in his regular clothes, while everyone below wore formal attire. The boy looked up, and Marcus saw something that broke his heart: resignation. Benjamin had already learned to accept being othered in his own home. Hey, buddy. Marcus sat beside him. How are you doing? Grandmother says I can't come down until dinner, and then I have to eat in the kitchen because I'm not ready for the adult table. Benjamin's voice was small. She says I need to learn my place. Marcus pulled his son close. Listen to me, Ben. What grandmother says isn't always true. You're smart, you're kind, and you deserve to be treated with respect. Always. Do you understand? Benjamin nodded against his chest, but Marcus could feel the boy trembling. How long had this been going on? How many times had Carol and Sandra chipped away at his son's self-worth when Marcus wasn't there to see? Tomorrow was Christmas Day. Tomorrow, Carol would bring more of her people to witness whatever she had planned, and Marcus would let it happen, because he needed to see how far they'd go. He needed them to reveal themselves completely. Come on, he said, standing. Let's go down to dinner. But grandmother said, I heard what she said, and I'm your father, and I say you're eating with me. They walked downstairs together, Marcus's hand on Benjamin's shoulder. The dining room fell silent when they entered. Carol's expression hardened. Marcus, I thought we discussed. Benjamin will eat with his family, Marcus interrupted. He pulled out the chair next to his and gestured for his son to sit. The room held its breath. Sandra's face flushed red, but she said nothing. Carol's eyes were ice, but she too remained silent, perhaps not wanting to make a scene in front of her guests. Dinner was tense. The conversations around them flowed, but Marcus felt the weight of Carol's stare throughout the meal. Benjamin ate quietly, trying to make himself small, and Marcus's heart ached for what his son had endured. As dessert was being served, Morgan leaned across the table toward Benjamin. You know, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, you're really lucky. If it were up to me, you wouldn't even be allowed at this table. But Aunt Carol is generous with charity cases. The words hung in the air. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others pretended not to hear. Sandra stared at her plate, a small smile playing at her lips. Marcus met Morgan's eyes. That's enough. Oh, did I offend you? Morgan's voice was saccharine. I'm just being honest. It's what the Prices value: honesty and breeding. Two things your side of the family seems to lack. Morgan, Carol's voice held a warning, but it was half-hearted. She was enjoying this. Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Ben, get your coat. We're leaving. Sit down, Sandra hissed. You're being dramatic. No, Marcus said calmly. I'm being a father, something you seem to have forgotten how to appreciate. He took Benjamin's hand and walked out, ignoring Sandra's protests and Carol's cold dismissal. In the car, Benjamin was quiet. I'm sorry, Dad, the boy finally whispered. For what? For causing trouble. Grandmother says, I always cause trouble. Marcus pulled over, turning to face his son. Listen to me very carefully, Ben. You did nothing wrong. Not tonight, not ever. What just happened in there? That's not your fault, and it's going to change. I promise you. Benjamin nodded, but Marcus saw the doubt in his eyes. His son had learned not to trust promises. They spent Christmas Eve at Marcus's favorite diner, eating pancakes for dinner and watching the snow start to fall. For a few hours, it was just the two of them, and Benjamin even laughed a sound Marcus realized he hadn't heard in weeks. But tomorrow was Christmas Day. Tomorrow, Carol would expect them at the mansion by noon. Tomorrow, Marcus suspected, the real performance would begin, and he would be ready. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow covering Manhattan. Marcus woke early, made Benjamin's favorite breakfast, and watched his son open the presents. Marcus had carefully chosen a new telescope, books about space, a model rocket kit. Simple joys, unmarred by the Price family's poison. Sandra had stayed out all night, texting only once. At Mother's, don't be late tomorrow. Noon sharp. Marcus dressed Benjamin in the outfit. Sandra had left out an uncomfortable-looking suit that made the 7-year-old look like a miniature adult. The boy tugged at the collar. Why do I have to wear this? Because grandmother expects it, Marcus said, straightening the tie. But remember what I told you. You're perfect exactly as you are, no matter what anyone says. They arrived at Carol's Connecticut mansion at 11:55. The place was a monument to old money, 3 stories of white stone, columns framing the entrance, a circular driveway with a fountain at its center, currently frozen solid. Mercedes and BMWs lined the drive. Carol had assembled an audience. Sandra met them at the door, her smile brittle. You're almost late. We're 5 minutes early, Marcus corrected. Mother considers anything less than 15 minutes early to be late. She looked down at Benjamin with distaste. Your collar is crooked. Go fix it in the bathroom. And wash your hands. They're probably filthy from your father's car. Benjamin scurried off, and Sandra turned to Marcus. Mother wants to speak with you. In the study. Now. Carol's study was pure intimidation, dark wood paneling, leather furniture, her late husband's degrees and awards covering the walls. Carol sat behind a massive desk, Morgan standing beside her, like a lieutenant. They'd staged this, Marcus realized. A 2-on-1 ambush. Sit, Carol commanded. Marcus remained standing. Carol's eyes narrowed. I'll be direct, Marcus. This marriage isn't working. Sandra deserves better. And frankly, so does Benjamin. The boy needs proper guidance, not whatever influence you provide. Interesting, Marcus said. What exactly is wrong with my influence? You're not one of us, Morgan interjected. Benjamin is a Price. He deserves to be raised with proper values, not dragged down to your level. Marcus looked at Carol. Is this why you wanted me here? To tell me I'm not good enough for your daughter? I'm telling you, Carol said coldly, that Sandra will be filing for divorce after the holidays, and she will be seeking full custody of Benjamin. Your role in his life will be minimal. We have resources, Morgan added, her voice gleeful. Lawyers, judges, connections. You're just an architect from nowhere. You think you can fight the Price family? Marcus finally sat, crossing his legs casually. And what if I don't agree to these terms? Then we'll destroy you in court, Carol said flatly. We'll show that you're an absent father, too focused on work. We'll demonstrate that Benjamin is better served by his mother's family. And if you resist, she leaned forward. Well, accidents happen. Business licenses get revoked. Contracts disappear. We have ways of making life very difficult for people who oppose us. Marcus nodded slowly, as if considering. I see. And this is all decided? It's been decided for months, Morgan said smugly. We've been planning this carefully. You never even saw it coming. Lunch is being served. Sandra appeared in the doorway. Mother, shall we? They filed out, leaving Marcus alone in the study. He sat for a moment, processing their admission. Threats, conspiracy, parental alienation stated plainly, with no shame. Perfect. He pulled out his phone and sent Theodore a text. They've threatened me directly. Multiple witnesses would be ideal. Theodore responded immediately. Already ahead of you. The pen in your jacket pocket has been recording everything since you walked in. Marcus had forgotten about the recording device Theodore had given him weeks ago. disguised as an expensive pen. He'd worn it today on Theodore's advice. And now he had Carol and Morgan on tape, confessing to their plans, making threats. He joined the family in the dining room, where 30 people filled an enormous table. Benjamin sat at the far end, dwarfed by adults on either side. Marcus moved to sit beside his son, but Sandra stopped him. "Mother's assigned seating," she said. "Benjamin stays where he is." The meal began, and Marcus watched from across the table as his son struggled to navigate adult conversation and formal etiquette. Benjamin knocked over a water glass, and Carol's expression turned to stone. "Clumsy," she announced, just like his father. Laughter rippled through some of the guests. Benjamin's face burned red. "He's 7, Marcus said quietly. "He's a price," Carol shot back. "And prices are not clumsy. Morgan, dear, why don't you take Benjamin to the kitchen to clean up properly?" Morgan stood with exaggerated patience. "Come on, little cousin. Let's go make you presentable." Marcus started to rise, but Sandra's hand clamped on his wrist. "Let Morgan handle it. You're being overprotective." Every instinct screamed at Marcus to follow, but he forced himself to stay seated. He needed to see this through. Whatever they had planned, he needed to witness it. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Marcus checked his watch. 11:45. He'd been patient long enough. "I'm going to check on Benjamin," he announced, standing. "Sit down," Carol commanded. Morgan is perfectly capable, but Marcus was already moving. He crossed through the mansion's hallways, following the sound of voices. Morgan's laughter, high and cruel, and then Benjamin's voice, small and scared. Marcus rounded the corner to the kitchen, and his blood turned to ice. Benjamin stood in the center of the room, tears streaming down his face, holding a glass of water. Morgan lounged against the counter, her phone pointed at the boy, recording. "Go on," Morgan was saying. "Drink it, or grandmother will be very disappointed." "Please," Benjamin whispered. "Please don't make me." "It's just water, Ben." Morgan's voice was saccharine. "Special water, just for special boys who can't behave properly. Now drink, or I'll tell Aunt Sandra you've been very, very bad." Marcus stepped fully into the room, and his eyes went to the glass in Benjamin's hands. The water had a strange yellow tint. "What is that?" His voice was deadly calm. Morgan jumped, nearly dropping her phone. "Marcus, we were just—" "I asked what that is." Marcus crossed the space in 3 strides, taking the glass from Benjamin's trembling hands. He smelled it, and his stomach turned. Toilet water. Morgan had made his 7-year-old son hold a glass of toilet water, had been filming him, was about to force him to drink it. "It's just a joke," Morgan said quickly, her confidence wavering. "A Christmas prank. We were going to—" The kitchen door opened, and Sandra walked in, followed by Carol. They took in the scene: Marcus holding the glass, Benjamin crying, Morgan with her phone still recording. And Sandra laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh or an uncertain one. It was genuine amusement. "Oh my God," Sandra said, pulling out her own phone. "Morgan, send me that video." "Mother, you have to see this. Your worth is nothing," Morgan said to Benjamin, emboldened by Sandra's reaction. "You're not a real price. You're just the helps kid. And after Christmas, when your daddy's gone, you'll understand your place." She looked at Marcus with pure contempt. "You'll also wash the dishes after dinner. Get used to it." Marcus stood perfectly still, the glass in his hand, watching his wife, the woman he'd married, the mother of his child, grinning as their son sobbed. "This is who you are," he said quietly. Sandra's smile faded. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. Boys need to learn humility. Mother says—" "I know exactly what your mother says." Marcus set down the glass carefully and pulled out his phone. "And I know exactly what you've planned. The divorce papers, the custody battle, the threats." Carol's expression hardened. "You recorded us? That's illegal." "Actually," Marcus said, "in Connecticut, one-party consent is sufficient. And I was the party who consented." He held up his phone. "But that's not the call I'm making now." He dialed Theodore's number, putting it on speaker. "Theodore, I'm invoking the emergency custody provisions we discussed. I have visual confirmation of child abuse. Multiple witnesses. Please proceed immediately." "Confirmed." Theodore's voice came through crisp and professional. "Judge Martinez is standing by." I'm filing now. Expect police within 20 minutes. Wait. Sandra's face drained of color. You can't. Phase 2. Marcus continued. The financial disclosures. Already sent to the SEC and the State Attorney General. Theodore confirmed. Your evidence of Sandra's signature on fraudulent investment documents has been forwarded to all relevant authorities. Carol went white. You wouldn't dare. Phase 3. Asset freeze. Executed 10 minutes ago. Theodore said. All joint accounts frozen pending investigation. All assets in Sandra's name frozen pending resolution of the fraud allegations. Mrs. Price's accounts frozen pending her involvement in the conspiracy. You can't do that with us. Carol's voice cracked. The imperious mass shattering. We're the Prices. We have lawyers. We have connections. You had connections, Marcus corrected. But your lawyers? They were very helpful when my investigator approached them with evidence of your planned blackmail scheme. Turns out attorneys don't like being used to commit felonies. 3 of them are cooperating with authorities. The 4th is under investigation himself. Morgan's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the tile floor. The investments Carol made using your name, Sandra? Marcus continued calmly. They're failing, exactly as predicted. You're liable for $43 million in losses. Unless you claim you didn't know what you were signing, which means admitting you're incompetent to make financial decisions, which demolishes any custody claim you might have. Sandra sank into a chair. How did you? I'm an architect, Marcus said. I understand structures, load-bearing points, weaknesses, and I've spent 6 months analyzing the structure of your family's lies. He looked at Carol. Your fortune is built on sand, bad investments, fraudulent dealing, and tax evasion. The IRS will be very interested in the offshore accounts my investigator found. You're destroying us, Carol whispered. No, Marcus said. I'm protecting my son from you. There's a difference. The sound of sirens grew closer. Marcus knelt beside Benjamin, pulling his son into his arms. It's okay now, he whispered. Nobody's going to hurt you again. 2 Connecticut state troopers entered the kitchen, followed by a woman Marcus recognized as a child services investigator. Marcus Rubio? One trooper asked. That's me. We have an emergency custody order issued by Judge Martinez. Your son is to be released into your sole custody, pending investigation. And we need to speak with, he consulted his notes, Morgan Price, Sandra Rubio, and Carol Price regarding allegations of child abuse. For the next hour, the mansion transformed into a crime scene. The glass of toilet water was bagged as evidence. Morgan's phone was confiscated, the video footage preserved. Benjamin gave a statement to the child services investigator. His small voice describing months of abuse Marcus hadn't known about, being locked in closets, being forced to skip meals, being told he was worthless, stupid, unwanted. Each word was a knife in Marcus's heart. Sandra tried to claim ignorance, but the investigator produced text messages between her and Carol, planning lessons for Benjamin. Morgan tried to blame peer pressure, but her own social media was filled with cruel posts about training inferior family members. Carol, for her part, said nothing. She sat in her study, stone-faced, as her empire crumbled. By sunset, emergency restraining orders had been issued. Sandra, Carol, and Morgan were forbidden from contacting Benjamin or coming within 500 feet of Marcus or his son. The criminal investigation into child abuse was officially opened, and the financial investigation into Price investments would take months, but the initial findings were damning enough to freeze everything. Marcus drove Benjamin home through the darkness, his son asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted from the day's trauma. Theodore called as they crossed into Manhattan. How's Ben? Alive. Safe. That's what matters. The judge wants to see you both tomorrow. Formal custody hearing. But given the evidence, it's a formality. You'll have full sole custody by New Year. And the criminal charges? Morgan's looking at assault of a minor at minimum. Sandra and Carol are facing conspiracy to commit child abuse, plus the financial crimes. The DA is pushing hard. Apparently this case is making waves. Nobody likes seeing rich people abuse kids and think they're untouchable. Marcus felt no triumph, only exhaustion. What about Benjamin? How do we help him heal from this? I have the name of an excellent child therapist. She specializes in parental alienation cases. Theodore paused. Marcus, you did the right thing. You saved your son. After the call ended, Marcus carried Benjamin upstairs to his room. He tucked his son into bed, and the boy's eyes fluttered open. "Dad? I'm here, buddy. Are we safe now?" Marcus smoothed his son's hair. "Yes, we're safe. And I don't have to see grandmother anymore? Not unless you want to. And I don't think you want to." Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was bad. Like they said. I thought something was wrong with me." Marcus pulled his son close, feeling the small body shake with sobs. "Nothing is wrong with you. Nothing. What they did was wrong. What they said was wrong. You are perfect, and smart, and kind, and so loved." They sat like that for a long time, father and son, until Benjamin's breathing evened and he drifted back to sleep. Marcus stayed in the chair beside the bed, keeping watch. Tomorrow would bring more legal proceedings, more revelations, more consequences for the people who'd hurt his child. But tonight, Benjamin was safe. And that was everything. The morning after Christmas, Marcus woke to find Benjamin standing at his bedside. "Can't sleep?" Marcus asked. Benjamin shook his head. "I keep thinking about yesterday. About everything." Marcus sat up, making room on the bed. "Want to talk about it?" The boy climbed up beside him, small and fragile in his pajamas. Why did they hate me so much? It was the question Marcus had been dreading. How do you explain cruelty to a 7-year-old? How do you help a child understand that the people who should have loved him had instead used him as a target for their own bitterness? They didn't hate you, Ben. They hated themselves. And people who hate themselves sometimes hurt others to feel powerful. Marcus took his son's hand. "Your grandmother, your mother, Morgan, they weren't happy people. And instead of fixing what was broken inside them, they tried to break you to make themselves feel better. But I'm their family." "Biology doesn't make family," Marcus said. "Love makes family. Respect, kindness. Those things make family. What they did to you wasn't family. It was abuse." Benjamin was quiet for a moment. "Dr. Sarah says I need to talk about all the times they were mean. She says it's important to remember." Dr. Sarah Langford was the therapist Theodore had recommended. They'd had their first session yesterday afternoon, and while it had been difficult, Marcus could already see it was helping. "Dr. Sarah is right," Marcus said. "We need to remember, so we can heal. And so we never let anyone treat us that way again." The doorbell rang, interrupting them. Marcus checked his phone 7 a.m. on December 26th. Who would be visiting this early? He opened the door to find Theodore Ayers standing there with coffee and a banker's box full of documents. "Morning," Theodore said. "Thought you might need these." They sat at the kitchen table while Benjamin watched cartoons, spreading out the paperwork that would reshape their lives. "The custody hearing is at 2 p.m., Theodore began. "Judge Martinez has reviewed all the evidence. She's furious. Apparently, she has grandkids Benjamin's age, and the toilet water incident hit her hard." "What about the criminal charges?" "Dave filed this morning. Morgan Price is charged with assault and child endangerment. Sandra and Carol are charged with conspiracy to commit child abuse, plus a separate charge of witness intimidation based on their threats to you in the study." "And the financial crimes?" Theodore's expression turned predatory. "This is where it gets interesting. The SEC investigation into Price Investments uncovered systematic fraud going back years. Carol was running a Ponzi-style scheme, using new investor money to pay returns to old investors. Sandra's signature is on dozens of fraudulent documents. They're looking at federal charges. Marcus processed this. How much are they liable for? Conservative estimate, $200 million. And that's before penalties." Theodore pulled out another document. "But here's the kicker. Remember those business associates at Christmas dinner? 5 of them have already filed lawsuits against Price Investments. They're claiming fraud. Carol's lawyer called me this morning, trying to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "Basically, they want you to make this go away. Drop the custody fight, drop the criminal complaints, and they'll give you a generous settlement." Marcus looked toward the living room where Benjamin sat, engrossed in his cartoons. His son who had been forced to hold toilet water. His son who had been told he was worthless. "No deal," Marcus said. "That's what I told them." Theodore grinned. Their lawyer actually cried on the phone. Apparently, once the financial investigation became public, Price Investments lost every client they had. The firm is done. Carol's personal assets are frozen. Sandra's trust fund is gone. Morgan's credit cards have been canceled. "Good," Marcus said simply. The phone on the table buzzed. It was a number Marcus didn't recognize, but he answered anyway. Marcus Rubio? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Speaking. This is Jennifer Chen from Chen and Morrison Architecture. I'm calling regarding the partnership meeting scheduled for next week. Marcus's stomach dropped. His firm, with everything happening, he'd forgotten about the annual partnership review. Miss Chen, I apologize. With a family emergency, I haven't prepared. Actually, that's what I'm calling about. The senior partners met this morning. We've been following the news about your custody case. She paused. Mr. Rubio, we want you to know that Chen and Morrison stands behind you completely. We're postponing your review until February, and in the meantime, you're on paid leave to handle your family situation. Marcus was stunned. Thank you. We take care of our own, Miss Chen said. And Mr. Rubio? What you're doing for your son, that takes courage. The kind of courage we value at this firm. After the call ended, Marcus sat in silence. He'd expected fallout at work, expected his personal crisis to damage his professional standing. Instead, he'd found support. Good news? Theodore asked. Yeah. Marcus smiled for the first time in days. Good news. The custody hearing at 2 p.m. was, as Theodore predicted, a formality. Judge Martinez listened to the evidence, reviewed the videos and recordings, and spoke directly to Benjamin in her chambers. When she returned, her expression was granite. I've practiced family law for 23 years, she said, and I have never seen a clearer case of parental alienation and child abuse. Mrs. Rubio. Mrs. Price. Miss Price, your actions are not just cruel, they are criminal. This court grants Marcus Rubio sole legal and physical custody of Benjamin Rubio. Furthermore, I'm ordering supervised visitation only for Sandra Rubio, pending completion of parental fitness evaluation and mandatory therapy. Carol Price and Morgan Price are denied any contact with the minor child pending resolution of criminal charges. Sandra stood, her face twisted. You can't do this. I'm his mother. You were present while your cousin forced your 7-year-old child to hold toilet water and threatened to make him drink it. Judge Martinez said coldly. You laughed. You filmed it. You mocked him. Whatever maternal rights you had, you forfeited when you chose cruelty over care. Carol remained silent, but Marcus saw the rage in her eyes. She was a woman accustomed to power, to getting her way, and for the first time in her life, she was facing consequences she couldn't buy or threaten her way out of. As they left the courthouse, reporters swarmed. The Price family scandal had become news old money brought low. Child abuse in a Connecticut mansion, financial fraud on a massive scale. It was the kind of story that sold papers. Theodore ran interference while Marcus got Benjamin to the car. They drove home in silence. And when they arrived, Benjamin turned to his father. Is it really over? The legal part? Mostly. But healing? That's going to take time. Marcus unbuckled his son's seatbelt. We'll do it together, though. Every step. That night, after Benjamin fell asleep, Marcus stood in his home office, looking at the evidence boxes that Theodore had left. 6 months of documentation, recordings, photographs, financial records, the architecture of his revenge, carefully constructed piece by piece. He thought about Sandra, probably in her mother's mansion, facing the reality that her life, as she knew it, was over. He thought about Carol, watching her empire crumble. He thought about Morgan, young and stupid and cruel, learning that actions have consequences, and he felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no triumph. Just the quiet certainty that he had done what needed to be done. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You've destroyed us. I hope you're happy. It was from Sandra's phone. Marcus almost didn't respond, but then he thought of Benjamin, scared and small, holding that glass of toilet water. He typed, I protected my son. You destroyed yourselves. He blocked the number and went to check on Benjamin, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. New Year's Eve arrived with fresh snow. Marcus and Benjamin spent the day building a snowman in Central Park, just the two of them. Benjamin's laughter rang out clear and genuine, and Marcus felt something in his chest loosen hope, maybe, or the beginning of healing. They returned home to find a package on the doorstep. No return address, just Marcus's name written in elegant script. He opened it carefully while Benjamin changed into dry clothes. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Carol's personal stationery, expensive and cream-colored. "You think you've won," it read. "You've destroyed my family's reputation. You've taken my grandson. You've ruined everything my father built. But this isn't over, Marcus. The prices don't forget. We don't forgive. One day, when you least expect it, you'll understand what it means to cross us." Marcus read it twice, then took a photo and sent it to Theodore with a message. "Document this. Might be useful." Theodore replied immediately. "That's witness intimidation and violates the restraining order. I'm forwarding to the DA and the judge. Carol just gave us more ammunition." Marcus crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. Empty threats from a desperate woman. Carol had no power left, no empire to command, no resources to deploy. She was fighting a battle she'd already lost, too proud to accept defeat. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Theodore himself, carrying champagne. "Couldn't let you spend New Year's alone," he said, stepping inside. "Besides, I have news." They sat in the living room while Benjamin played with his new telescope, pointing it out the window at the night sky. "The DA is adding charges against Carol for the threatening note," Theodore began. "But that's not the big news. The big news is the plea offer." "Plea offer?" Sandra's lawyer reached out. "She wants to plead guilty to the child abuse charges in exchange for probation and mandatory therapy. She's also offering to cooperate fully with the financial investigation into her mother." Marcus considered this. What does that mean for Carol? It means the federal prosecutor will have everything they need to put Carol away for a long time. Financial fraud, tax evasion, witness tampering. We're talking 15 to 20 years minimum. And Morgan? Still fighting the charges. Her lawyer is trying to claim she was under Carol's influence, that she's a victim, too. Theodore snorted. "It won't work. We have her social media posts, her own videos. The girl documented her own cruelty. What's your recommendation on Sandra's plea?" Theodore leaned back. "Normally, I'd say take it. Probation means she stays out of your lives, and her cooperation destroys Carol. But this isn't my decision, Marcus. This is yours and Benjamin's." Marcus looked at his son, peering through the telescope with wonder. Benjamin had asked that morning if he'd ever have to see his mother again. The fear in his voice had been palpable. "What does supervised visitation look like?" Marcus asked. "Once a month, in a neutral location, with a court-appointed supervisor present. Sandra has to complete a year of therapy and parenting classes first. And Benjamin has to agree to see her. What if he doesn't want to? Then he doesn't have to. The court puts the child's well-being first, not the parent's desires." Marcus nodded slowly. "Accept the plea, but make sure the terms are clear. Benjamin's consent is required for any visitation. No pressure, no guilt trips, no manipulation. Done." Theodore raised his champagne glass. "To new beginnings." They toasted, and as midnight approached, Marcus called Benjamin over to watch the fireworks from the window. His son pressed against him, safe and warm, and Marcus felt the weight of the past months begin to lift. At midnight, the city erupted in celebration. Fireworks painted the sky in brilliant colors. Benjamin pointed out each burst, naming the colors, laughing at the patterns. "Dad?" Benjamin asked as the display faded. "Next year will be better, right?" Marcus pulled his son close. "Next year will be better. I promise." And this time, Benjamin believed him. January brought the trial. Morgan Price, refusing to accept a plea deal, faced a jury of her peers. The prosecution presented the video evidence, the text messages, the social media posts. They called Dr. Sarah Langford to testify about the psychological impact on Benjamin. They called the child services investigator, who had documented months of systematic abuse. Marcus attended every day of the trial, watching as Morgan's defense attorney tried and failed to paint her as a misguided teenager under her aunt's influence. The jury saw through it. They saw the cruelty in her eyes on those videos, heard the viciousness in her voice, read the gleeful posts about training Benjamin. The verdict came on January 15th, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Morgan to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Carol, watching from the gallery, aged visibly as the sentence was read. Sandra's plea hearing came next. She stood before Judge Martinez in a simple black dress, no designer labels, no jewelry. The prize fortune was gone, frozen or seized, and Sandra looked diminished without it. I accept full responsibility for my actions, Sandra read from a prepared statement, her voice shaking. I failed my son in the worst possible way. I allowed my mother's influence to poison my judgment, and I participated in behavior that was cruel, abusive, and unforgivable. I don't expect Marcus or Benjamin to forgive me. I only hope that someday Benjamin can understand that I am truly, deeply sorry. Judge Martinez studied her for a long moment. Mrs. Rubio, this court accepts your guilty plea. You are sentenced to 5 years of probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and mandatory therapy. You will have no contact with your son except through court-supervised visitation, and only if he consents. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. As Sandra left the courtroom, she looked at Marcus. Their eyes met for just a second, and Marcus saw something there he hadn't expected: genuine remorse. Whether it was real or just another performance, he couldn't tell, and ultimately, it didn't matter. Carol's trial was set for March, but the federal charges were moving faster. The SEC had built an airtight case against Price Investments. Carol's former business partners were cooperating, providing testimony about years of fraudulent dealings. The evidence was overwhelming. On February 1st, Carol's lawyer made one final attempt at contact. He called Theodore, who conferenced Marcus in. Mrs. Price would like to speak with Mr. Rubio directly, the lawyer said. To apologize? Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. Mr. Rubio, my client is facing life in prison. She's 73 years old. She knows she's dying in jail. She just wants— I don't care what she wants. Marcus interrupted. She had her grandson hold toilet water. She threatened my son. She tried to destroy my life to maintain her sense of superiority. She doesn't get absolution from me. Marcus, the lawyer's voice became desperate. Please, just 5 minutes. She's a broken woman. Good, Marcus said, and hung up. Theodore whistled. That was cold. She was cold when she made my 7-year-old cry. When she called him worthless. When she tried to steal him from me. Marcus felt no guilt. She doesn't deserve warmth. Carol's trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution paraded witness after witness, document after document. Price Investments had been a fraud for over a decade, stealing millions from investors while Carol lived in luxury. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came in late March. The federal judge showed no mercy. 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 15. At 73, it was effectively a life sentence. Carol stood to hear the verdict, and for the first time, Marcus saw her facade crack completely. She wasn't imperious anymore. She was just an old woman realizing she would die in prison. Having lost everything: her fortune, her reputation, her family, her freedom, Marcus felt nothing. Just the same quiet certainty that justice had been done. Spring came to New York with cherry blossoms and warm rain. Benjamin was thriving in therapy, slowly learning to trust again, to believe that he was worthy of love and respect. He'd started at a new school, one where nobody knew about the Price family scandal, and he'd made friends, real friends, who liked him for who he was. Marcus watched his son play in the park one Saturday in April, running and laughing with other children. Dr. Langford stood beside him, observing. He's healing, she said. Faster than I expected, actually. Having a stable, loving parent makes all the difference. What about the long-term effects? Marcus asked. Will he be okay? He'll carry scars, Dr. Langford said honestly. Abuse always leaves marks. But with continued therapy, with your support, he'll learn to process what happened. He'll understand that what they did wasn't his fault. He'll build healthy relationships. He'll be okay. That evening, Benjamin asked the question Marcus had been waiting for. Dad, do you think Mom really is sorry? They were building the model rocket kit together, carefully gluing pieces according to the instructions. Marcus set down the tube he was working on and gave his son his full attention. I think she's sorry she got caught, Marcus said carefully. I think she's sorry her life fell apart. Whether she's truly sorry for hurting you? I honestly don't know, Ben. Dr. Sarah says I get to decide if I want to see her. That's right. So if you won, what if I don't want to? Then you don't have to. Ever. Your feelings matter, Ben. You get to choose who's in your life. Benjamin was quiet for a moment, concentrating on his rocket. I don't want to see her, or grandmother, or Morgan. I just want it to be us. Marcus pulled his son into a hug. Then that's what it'll be. Just us. And maybe Auntie Claire? Benjamin asked hopefully. Marcus's sister Claire had flown in from Seattle when she'd heard about the custody battle. She'd been a fierce ally, testifying about Sandra's coldness, Carol's manipulation. She'd also been wonderful with Benjamin, taking him to museums and parks, showing him what healthy family looked like. Definitely Auntie Claire, Marcus agreed. And Theodore, and Dr. Sarah, and all the people who love you for real. Benjamin smiled, returning to his rocket. That's a lot of people. You deserve a lot of love, buddy. In May, Marcus received a letter. It came from the women's correctional facility where Morgan was serving her sentence. He almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Dear Mr. Rubio. It began in Morgan's neat handwriting. I don't expect you to read this, let alone respond. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did. Prison has given me time to think, to really see myself clearly for the first time. I was cruel because I was taught that cruelty was strength. I hurt Benjamin because hurting others made me feel powerful. I am deeply, truly ashamed. This letter isn't to ask for anything, not forgiveness, not mercy, not even acknowledgement. It's just to say, I'm sorry. You were right to protect your son from me. I hope someday I can become someone worthy of forgiveness, even if that forgiveness never comes. Morgan. Marcus read it twice, then filed it away. Maybe Morgan was sincere. Maybe prison had genuinely changed her. But it didn't matter. She'd made her choices, and now she lived with the consequences. He didn't respond. Summer arrived, and Marcus took Benjamin on a road trip across America. They saw the Grand Canyon, camped under desert stars, visited dinosaur museums and national parks. It was just the two of them, building memories untainted by the Price family's poison. One night, as they sat by a campfire in Utah, Benjamin looked up at the stars. Dad, do you think grandmother is looking at these same stars? Marcus followed his son's gaze. Maybe. In the prison yard, if she's allowed outside, does she think about what she did? I don't know, buddy. Some people never do. I think about it sometimes, Benjamin said quietly. About that day. About the glass of water. About feeling so scared. Marcus put his arm around his son. Does it still scare you? Not as much. Dr. Sarah says the scary feeling gets smaller every time I talk about it. Benjamin leaned against his father. She's right. It does get smaller. You're so brave, Ben. You're braver. You saved me. We saved each other, Marcus said. That's what family does. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, and Marcus felt a profound peace. The battle was over. The wounds were healing. His son was safe. Everything else was just details. August brought news that Carol's appeals had been denied. She would serve her full sentence with no possibility of early release. The Price mansion in Connecticut had been sold to cover legal fees and restitution payments. The family fortune was gone, distributed among the investors Carol had defrauded. Sandra had moved to a small apartment in Queens, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She attended her therapy sessions, completed her community service, and sent birthday cards to Benjamin that Marcus screened before deciding whether to pass along. So far, Benjamin had declined to read any of them. Morgan would be released in 2027, her life fundamentally altered by 3 years in prison. Whether she'd emerge better or more bitter remained to be seen. The Price family, once synonymous with Connecticut old money and social influence, was now a cautionary tale. Marcus occasionally saw articles, The Fall of the Price Dynasty, How Old Money Destroyed Itself, The Price of Cruelty. He didn't read them. Benjamin started second grade at his new school, confident and happy. His teacher called Marcus in September to say she was impressed by his son's kindness, his creativity, his emotional intelligence. He's a special kid, she said. You're doing something right. In October, on what would have been their 10-year anniversary, Marcus received one final letter from Sandra. This one came through her lawyer, official and formal. Marcus, I'm writing to request that you consider allowing me to see Benjamin for his birthday in November. I've completed all court-ordered therapy. I've held down a job for 8 months. I'm a different person than I was last Christmas. I'm not asking to be his mother again. I know I lost that right. I'm just asking for a chance to show him that people can change, can grow, can become better than their worst moments. If you don't want to grant this, I understand. But I'm asking anyway. Sandra. Marcus showed the letter to Theodore and Dr. Langford. They both said the decision should be Benjamin's. That evening, Marcus sat with his son and explained the request. She wants to see you, he said carefully. For your birthday. It would be supervised in a neutral location, and you could leave any time you wanted. But Ben, you don't have to do this. Not for me. Not for the court. Not for anyone. This is your choice. Benjamin thought about it for a long time. Would you be there? Every second. And I can leave if I want? The moment you want to. Benjamin nodded slowly. Okay. But just this once. I want to see if she's really different, or if she's still pretending. The meeting was scheduled for November 15th, Benjamin's 8th birthday, at a family services center in Manhattan. Sandra arrived early, dressed simply, her hair shorter, her face free of the elaborate makeup she used to wear. She looked nervous. Benjamin entered holding Marcus's hand, and when Sandra saw them, her eyes filled with tears. "Hi, Ben," she said softly. "Hi, Mom." They sat at a table with a supervisor nearby. Sandra had brought a present, a book about space, Benjamin's current obsession. Not expensive, not flashy, just thoughtful. "Happy birthday," she said. "Your dad mentioned you like astronomy now." Benjamin took the book cautiously. "Thank you. I know this is weird," Sandra said. "I know I have no right to be here. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Ben. Truly sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I'm in trouble. I'm sorry because I hurt you, and you never deserved that." Benjamin listened, his face unreadable. "Why did you let grandmother be mean to me?" Sandra's composure cracked. "Because I was weak. Because I cared more about my mother's approval than about being your mother. Because I was taught that love was conditional, and I passed that poison on to you. There's no excuse, Ben. I failed you in every way that mattered." "Dr. Sarah says hurt people," Benjamin said. "Is that what happened? Were you hurt?" "Yes," Sandra whispered. "By my mother, by my family's expectations, by a lot of things. But that doesn't excuse what I did. Lots of people get hurt and don't hurt their children. I made choices, Ben. Bad choices. And I have to live with that." They talked for an hour. Sandra didn't make excuses, didn't blame others, didn't try to minimize what she'd done. She answered Benjamin's questions honestly, even when the answers made her look worse. As the session ended, Benjamin stood. "Thank you for being honest. Can I hug you?" Sandra asked hesitantly. Benjamin looked at Marcus, who nodded. "Your choice, buddy." Benjamin stepped forward and let Sandra embrace him briefly. It was stiff, awkward, but it was something. "I don't know if I'll want to see you again," Benjamin said as they separated. "But thank you for saying sorry." "That's fair," Sandra said. "Whatever you decide, Ben, I respect it. You're a wonderful kid, and I'm proud of you, even though I have no right to be." In the car afterward, Benjamin was quiet. "What did you think?" Marcus asked. "I think she was telling the truth," Benjamin said. "I think she really is sorry. But I still don't want her to be my mom." "You don't have to want that. Can we go home? I want to use my telescope. Auntie Claire said Jupiter would be visible tonight." Marcus smiled. "Absolutely, buddy." They drove home through the New York evening, and Marcus felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. Benjamin had faced his fear, heard his mother's apology, and made his own decision about what came next. He was healing. He was strong. He was going to be okay. December arrived again, a full year since that terrible Christmas. Marcus and Benjamin decorated their apartment together, stringing lights and hanging ornaments. There was no pressure to attend fancy dinners, no demands from toxic relatives, no walking on eggshells. Just a father and son, building their own traditions. On Christmas Eve, they volunteered at a homeless shelter, serving dinner to families in need. Benjamin worked tirelessly, carrying trays and smiling at everyone, and Marcus felt a swell of pride. His son, who had been broken down and told he was worthless, was now freely giving kindness to strangers. That night, as they walked home through falling snow, Benjamin took his father's hand. "Dad, I'm glad it's just us for Christmas. Me too, buddy. I mean, Auntie Claire is coming tomorrow. And Theodore, and Dr. Sarah. So it's not just us, but it's our family, the one we chose. Marcus stopped walking, kneeling to his son's level. Ben, you are the smartest, kindest, most amazing kid I've ever known, and I'm so proud to be your dad. Benjamin hugged him fiercely. I'm proud to be your son. Christmas morning was perfect. Benjamin opened presents, more astronomy, equipment, books, a coding kit he'd asked for. Claire made her famous pancakes. Theodore arrived with gifts and terrible jokes. Dr. Langford stopped by briefly to say hello and drop off homemade cookies. They ate too much, laughed constantly, and built the model rocket together. When it was time to launch it in Central Park, a small crowd gathered to watch. Benjamin held the controller, counting down with pure joy on his face. 3, 2, 1, liftoff. The rocket soared into the winter sky, climbing higher and higher, and the crowd applauded. Benjamin turned to Marcus, his face radiant. We did it, Dad. We really did it. Marcus pulled his son close, watching the rocket arc across the sky before deploying its parachute and drifting back to Earth. Yeah, buddy, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We really did. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Benjamin was asleep, Marcus stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. It was from Carol's lawyer. My client passed away this evening. Heart attack. She wanted you to know she died thinking about what she'd done to her grandson. Thought you should hear it officially. Marcus read the message twice, then deleted it. Carol was gone, having lived just long enough to see everything she'd built turn to ash. He felt no satisfaction, no grief, nothing at all. He deleted the number and returned to watching the snow fall over Manhattan, thinking about second chances and new beginnings. Behind him, Benjamin stirred in his sleep, murmuring something that sounded like rockets and stars. Marcus smiled. His son was dreaming of beautiful things now, not nightmares. They'd come so far from that terrible Christmas a year ago. They'd survived, healed, and built something new from the wreckage. And that, Marcus thought, was the best revenge of all, not just defeating his enemies, but building a life so good that their cruelty became irrelevant. They were happy. They were free. They were whole. The Price family was gone, scattered to prison and poverty and graves. But Marcus and Benjamin, they were just beginning. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.